Hello everybody. I need to workshop an intro to my videos, but since I haven't been uploading for a pretty long time, I think that it'll be okay for now. Yeah, I wanted to talk today a little bit about why I haven't been on YouTube. Don't mind this. Actually, I'm currently sitting in the spot that we have devoted in our room to a Parker bed, complete with water, which is right behind me, which you can't see. But anyway, we actually set this up for Parker because he is very old, obviously, and he has a hard time getting to the water when he's up on our bed because we have to pick him up and put him on the floor, and it wakes me up all night because William sleeps right through it. Anyway, so we made him a nice cozy spot on the floor, complete with thick blankets and padding, and his water is right there, so if he needs a drink he can get it, and he sleeps just right beside me. So anyway, that's what this is. This is actually a box that I have propped up to block him from the rest of the room because I don't want him to wander around and get lost, because if you didn't know, he is blind and he is deaf. Not entirely blind, but he can only see like light things, so when it's dark he cannot see. I have it set up. This is a little area. Anyway, that's entirely on a whole nother tangent of everything else, I guess. But yeah, today I wanted to talk a little bit about why I haven't been on YouTube for a while. And there are multiple reasons. The first reason is honestly burnout. When I was uploading videos every single week, I was burnt out because I was working on school and I was maintaining everything in the house. It's not our house, but I was maintaining everything of mine and William's in the house, and maintaining the animals, maintaining myself, and it was just a lot of work. I would spend so much time on the computer. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I got stressed and I was like, this is not fun like it used to be. When I first started uploading videos, it was fun, but then it got exhausting really fast. So that's one reason why I haven't been on YouTube. Another reason that I wanted to talk about is actually mental health. And alongside burnout, my last year of college, which is what I was completing, was just stressful. Of course, I was working toward getting my bachelor's degree, and I do have it now, but as I was working toward it, it was just like, wow, stressful. I had a lot of papers to write. I had a lot of homework to do. Every week I was writing like a 2,000 word paper, and that doesn't sound like much to people sometimes, but it really was, especially when I was already so burnt out of everything else. And so I was working and working and working to try to do all of it. And then maintain an Instagram and maintain myself in the house, and it was just a mess. So I slipped into depression. I've actually talked about this before on my YouTube, so if you had any question about it, you can go check out the video talking about, I believe it was overcoming my anxiety, that I talked about my anxiety and depression. I have struggled with that since I was a kid. Like, I have struggled with that my whole life. Sometimes it comes on really hard, and then other times it'll back off, and you know, it's a very difficult thing to maneuver. And so trying to do all of these things, and I know for some people it doesn't sound like much, because there are people out there who are working 3 jobs and still doing schoolwork, and there are people out there that are working a terrible job and, you know, have kids and stuff, and like I get that my situation doesn't sound that bad, but for me personally it was, and I was so stressed out. And there are a lot of things that I can't even talk about in my life that happen that make it difficult, but essentially I was just putting myself into everything and burning myself out and depressing myself, and it just became such an issue. And I was like, I have to cut something out. And obviously I couldn't cut out school, so I had to cut out YouTube. Another issue that I had to deal with during this time was my situation with birth control. I bet every single woman in like that watches this, or most of them, have had to consider birth control and how to maneuver their fertility. And I think it's probably apparent, but if it wasn't already, I don't want kids right now. That is a big issue when you are in a relationship, especially a relationship where you're living with that person and you are spending so much time with that person. One thing leads to another, and then you have a baby. And so I don't want one. I don't want a baby. I was on oral birth control, and it was a horrible experience for me up until I was put on the progestin only oral birth control. Then it wasn't so bad, but there were side effects that I was dealing with, and now that I don't have it in my life, it's less, like those issues are less. I was researching my birth control and I found out that it had a specific dye in it that is actually really bad for you. Now that might sound crazy, which some people really do think it is, but I'm very conscientious of what I put in my body. William and I actually have an app, and obviously I'm so small of a channel, so this is definitely not sponsored, but Yuka, if you want to sponsor me, you can sponsor me if you were to ever see it. But I have this app called Yuka, and this is what it looks like. Essentially what you do is you scan what it is that you are going to consume, whether it be food or skincare products, and it will tell you the ingredients and tell you what ingredients are harmful and what aren't. So for example, I scanned hummus because I like hummus, and this one had potassium sorbate in it, and so I then can make an educated decision. Am I going to use it? Am I going to not use it? So that's very cool. It gives you insight on what you're putting into your body. I try very, very, very hard to put good things into my body, and I already know that birth control can cause various types of cancer, can cause various hormonal imbalances. Honestly, birth control is really not good for your body. And when I started looking into it more and also started looking into the ingredients of it, I was like, I don't want this in my body. So after that discovery, I guess you could say, I went to my gynecologist and I was like, hey, I don't like that there's this dye in here, and also I don't really like being on the oral birth control because there's so many bad ingredients in there. Is there any way that I could try something else, preferably low to no hormone? And she recommended that I get Kyleena, which is an IUD. So I know that Kyleena is low hormone, And I didn't necessarily want a hormonal birth control, but during that time when I got the IUD, there were active lawsuits against, I believe it's Paragard, is the name of the copper IUD, because the arms would break off and puncture your uterus, and then it would render you infertile, or worse, you could like have internal bleeding or die. So I was like, I don't really want that one. So if I'm going to try one, I might as well try the one that she recommended. So I went and I got the IUD, and the procedure, sorry, the camera's moving because Malcolm's on the bed. Hi, Meow. The procedure was super painful for me, pretty traumatic. I didn't know that they were going to use a tenaculum, which I probably should have assumed that that was going to happen, but I didn't really know the procedure in the first place. And so when I found out that they were using a tenaculum, which if you don't know is essentially like 2 needles that like puncture into your cervix to hold it still when they put the IUD in, it's painful. And that was honestly, from my understanding, the most painful part. Like, yeah, it hurt when they, you know, when they inserted the IUD, but it did not hurt as bad as the tenaculum going in and then coming back out of my cervix. So I was like traumatized. I don't mean to use the word traumatized, but I feel as though that's probably the best way to describe it. I actually had to go to pelvic floor physical therapy because of it, so I think that that's probably the best diagnosis for myself. But yeah, I was absolutely horrified by that procedure, and the cramps were like nothing I had ever felt before. And I have like not the worst period cramps, but I get some pretty bad cramps because I technically have PCOS, and that's a whole nother thing. Obviously I'm working to like treat that myself. Yeah, it was like painful. And so I was told that these cramps would go away. And they didn't necessarily go away. And I had the IUD in, I believe, for 4 months before what happened next. So I went on a trip with my mother and my great aunt and uncle down to Virginia Beach because my uncle was graduating from the military. Maybe graduating is not, he was retiring from the military. That's probably, I don't know why I said graduating. Anyway, it's technically in a sense. Anyway, but he was leaving the military. So we went to the ceremony and it was great. I had fun. And the next morning, I started having contractions, like actual contractions. Like I was sobbing, laying on the floor, having contractions. It was a horrible mess. Anyway, yeah, it was very bad. And right after that, my mom and my aunt encouraged me to have it removed. So when I got home, I did. And for the first time ever, my body had no hormones in it, like added hormones. And the IUD had already messed with my mood, but having no hormones in my body anymore when I was so used to them really messed me up for a little bit there. I fell into a depressive episode, and it was like hard enough for me to even get out of bed. I stopped doing yoga. I was like not good. And also during this time, I had recently stopped going to pelvic floor PT because my symptoms were like getting better. However, obviously that like probably was the only thing during that time that was keeping me going. So I probably should have gone longer, but you know, hindsight's 20/20, I guess. But yeah, I just fell into this depression and I was just like, not good. So everything of mine started to slack. And this was also around the time that I was finishing up my last course for college. And I had a professor who it was actually the first professor that I left a bad review for. He was not, he was going through things in his personal life, but he also just kind of sucked as a professor in the first place. So it was a big mess and I was just losing it. Everything in my life kind of just came to a halt. I stopped going on walks, I stopped running, I stopped doing yoga, I stopped eating like how I normally did, which was like making my own food and really like taking care of myself. I really stopped doing that. It was just like, what, you know, what from there, what am I supposed to do? And so it took about, I had my IUD removed in January 2023. So literally just very recently. And it's taken about 2 months to get somewhat normal. And I still have days where it just doesn't feel right. And I just, I guess my emotions are just in hyperdrive right now. So basically I'm trying to really get back into who I am. Fortunately, right now, I am at a point in my life where I have the freedom to do these things that are good for me and really care for myself. So yeah, I guess this is me coming back to YouTube. I'm not going to stress myself out too much to try to keep up with everything. I already do a lot on my TikTok, which is really cool if you want to check that out. It's That Vegan Wench, and you can actually use the link that I'll put in the description after this to access that TikTok. I want to start doing things for me again. Oh, and I entirely like blew over it, but I graduated from college, obviously, now that I'm done with it, and now I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, so that's very cool. Yeah, I'm kind of at the point in my life where I want to do things for me and try to grow into the person that I want to be, and I think that it's a good time now to really like hone in on this. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to do more interesting videos in the future. Maybe more videos talking about veganism. If you're interested in that, obviously I have a life outside of just being vegan, so I kind of want to touch on that too. Yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!